Hey guys, we need to talk about the Bears coaching search. Yes, I know it's going to be a long couple of months, but we're starting to get some ideas of who will be interviewing for the position, what the search will look like, who will be heading the search, and I'm going to get to some of the audio from yesterday where Ryan Poles, the Bears general manager, team president Kevin Warren, and owner George McCaskey met with the media. Also going to get you some information on who the Bears are interviewing and some news from around the league that will provide a little bit more context about who is actually a possibility and who may not be a possibility. Now, let's start with that. We do know that the Bears are interviewing Mike Vrabel today, the former Titans head coach. Now, to me, I don't see this as a real possibility, and that is because Sunday night it was announced that the Patriots are moving on from their head coach, Gerard Mayo, after just 1 year. Robert Kraft said it was one of the hardest decisions he's ever had to make. Why do you think they were moving on from him after 1 year? Well, it could be performance-related, but more likely, it could be Robert Kraft seeing that one of his prodigal sons in Mike Vrabel is on the market, and come on. Mike Vrabel, the overwhelming favorite to be the next head coach of the New England Patriots. Now, he was kind of second on the list for Bears fans. If you were to poll every Bears fans, I know it's not scientific, but that's just sort of the gauge that I have. Number one has been Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions. Now, speculating on where Johnson could end up, well, first and foremost, he could stay in Detroit. And he has done it now 2 coaching cycles in a row. Last season, he turned down the Washington job. The year before that, he turned down the Carolina job to stay in Detroit. Now, if he finds a job that he's very interested in, he's going to move on. So what are the jobs that he could be interested in? Of course, the Bears are there. And then the Jacksonville Jaguars are another team that would be intriguing to him if, in fact, the Jaguars were to clean house. They got rid of Doug Peterson, but owner Shad Khan announced that general manager Trent Baalke will be back. Trent Baalke, of course, survived the firing of Urban Meyer, survived now the firing of Doug Peterson. If you go back to his time in San Francisco, he was brought on as the full-time general manager only to attract Jim Harbaugh. And then when Jim Harbaugh moved on, he still somehow stayed there to hire Jim Tomsula, who then was fired after a year, and Trent Baalke survived that firing as well. This guy is unbelievable in his ability to not lose his job despite some failings in and around the team. But is he sticking around in Jacksonville? We're going to get to that here in just a second. So let's start with Ryan Poles. I wondered whether or not it's a good idea to have him around. Could his presence in the search be a deterrent to potential head coaches out there? Just think about it logically. If a general manager is going into an absolute must-have-it year and a coach is starting their contract and it's in a developmental rebuild stage, those two things don't exactly line up. Now, one of the big questions was, would Ryan Poles be given a contract extension to assure coaches out there that maybe their timeline matched up? Ryan Poles was asked that question at the microphone yesterday.
Organization set up this coaching search and is trying to make it as attractive as his job as possible. Were you given a contract extension?
I've said from the day I've been hired, I'm not going to get in my contract. That I just think it's a very personal thing in terms of how much I'm making and how long I'm making it.
You understand why any?
Yeah, so the candidates that we talk to, that'll be something that I can address with them.
All right, so he doesn't want to answer the question. Kevin Warren was then asked, is it a problem if Ryan Poles is not given a contract extension? Would that deter potential head coaches from wanting the job? Here's what he had to say.
Your confidence in Ryan.
Yes.
Are you committed to him for the long term? Because that seems like that would be a potential concern for a new coach coming in. If Ryan is at the end of his contract and this new coach would be starting his contract.
I mean, there are a lot of assumptions in your question. When we say long term, I mean, a year is a lifetime. And I know that's important.
All right, so that answer right there from Kevin Warren seemingly gives away a couple of things. First of all, Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune reported that Ryan Poles' contract, this was a while ago, it was a 4-year deal, whereas Matt Eberflus, when he was hired, got a 5-year deal. That seemingly confirms it right there, where Kevin Warren says a year is a lifetime. That kind of sounds like, oh, he has 1 year left on his contract, and since he just finished his 3rd year, sounds like he got a 4-year contract. The other question is, was he given a contract extension? No, it sounds like he still has 1 year left on his contract. And then George McCaskey was later asked if it would be a problem if a general manager and head coach were not on the same timeline, and he said he didn't think so. So it seems like Ryan Poles was not given a contract extension. So there you have it. Certainly seems like we have a situation where new head coach and general manager, if Ryan Poles is going to stick around, are not on the same timeline. Now, is there any chance that if a candidate came in that they really liked and said, no, I don't want to work for Ryan Poles, I want my own guy, is there any chance that the Bears would make that happen? Well, Kevin Warren was asked about that.
To bring in their own general managers. How do you respond to that, saying that Ryan's leading the search? If somebody comes in and says, I want this job, but I want my own GM.
Yeah, one, I think, we made it clear. I made it clear on early December. And as Ryan talked about today, he is our point person on the search. He's our general manager. He's head of football operations. From a hypothetical standpoint, it probably wouldn't be appropriate for me to answer that at that point in time. I'm confident in our process. I said it in December, and I'll say it again. This will be a coveted job. I mean, we have so much going for us. We have incredible ownership. We have the best fan base.
Woo, that's not exactly, no, Ryan Poles is my general manager, and I would never even consider giving in to a new head coach who wanted their own general manager. Ryan Poles is my general manager. That's not what that was. So that's the Bears. Now, Ben Johnson, I mentioned the Jaguars took a huge hit in those sweepstakes when they announced that Trent Baalke, the general manager, was returning, even though they fired their head coach, Doug Peterson. Now, I got to give it to one of my friends and colleagues, Mia O'Brien, who I worked with in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She now works in Jacksonville for the Jaguars flagship station. She asked the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Shad Khan, directly whether or not he would consider getting rid of Trent Baalke if a head coach asked for him to, with Trent Baalke sitting right next to him in the Zoom conference. Check this shit out.
All right, we're going to go to Mia O'Brien, then Gary Smith.
Hi, Trent and Shad. Thanks so much for doing this. I'd actually like to go back to John's first question, Shad. Back to you. I know you noted that if this head coaching candidate was to say, hey, I think the medical needs to be reevaluated, the health and wellness, if they were to say, I would like to reevaluate the front office and the general manager, what would your response be?
My response would be, how would you improve it? And then if it is credible, you want to do it, okay? So how does a structure work? I mean, I just want to make sure that this isn't about ego or power or something more sinister, quite frankly. There have been some of those elements that I've found, in my experience in the NFL. I mean, if it's a legit effort to get better, then everything, should be on the table.
Outstanding question from Mia O'Brien, leaving no wiggle room whatsoever. The question, very simply, if a coach asks you to switch the general manager, what will your response be? And he's like, well, I mean, if this guy's credible, let's do it with his general manager who we just announced is returning next season, sitting, well, I guess it was a Zoom, but right next to him in the news conference. Just unbelievable. First of all, great reporting by Mia O'Brien, but do you now see, I think a lot of people in the NFL, they're like, these owners are just very smart people. They're successful and they know exactly what they're doing. They know how to run a business. Well, the good ones do, but the bad ones are just like your dysfunctional jobs. If you work in a dysfunctional situation where they don't know what they're doing and they don't treat people well and they do shit like this to potentially make candidates from around the league look at them like, am I sure I want to go work there? So, which situation's better? The Bears, where you have a general manager going into a lame duck season, or the Jaguars, who aren't exactly sure whether or not they're going to keep their general manager around. They say they are, but then again, are the Bears doing the same thing? Like, what is happening here? Who is making the decision? And is Ben Johnson still in a position where he feels like the positives of one of these jobs outweighs the negatives? There will be plenty more information to come over the next several weeks and months, and I think a lot of Bears fans still very pessimistic, even though it seems so obvious. Back the fucking Brinks truck up to Ben Johnson, pay him 15 or 16, $17 million, whatever he is asking for in that ballpark within reason. Make him your head coach. Quickly before we go, the Bears requested to interview Mike McCarthy. Cowboys owner Jerry Jones said you may not interview him, but his contract runs out on January the 14th. So they can't interview him now, but the Cowboys have a week to give him an extension, or the Bears could interview him. And remember, I warned you about this in the past. He is a Trace Armstrong client. Trace Armstrong is a very influential agent who has big time pull in the Bears organization. He's the agent of their former offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, and Shane Waldron. Their former head coaches, Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus. The current GM, Ryan Poles, he's his agent. He is Mike McCarthy's agent, and Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl. He's an offensive guy. He's somewhat of a yes man. He knows the division. I could see the McCaskies falling in love with him. And look, I don't think he's a bad coach. In fact, if I were to rank him, I would say he's somewhere right in the middle, somewhere between 13th and 17th best in the NFL. But do you know what that equals in the NFC North? That equals dead last. That's the worst coach in the NFC North by a considerable margin. Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, Mike McCarthy. It's a big gap. Why would you hire the guy who you already know would be the worst coach in the division? Don't do that. Hopefully Jerry Jones gives him a contract extension, and the Bears do not have to worry about that. But as I said, plenty of updates coming. Like and subscribe. I'll continue to keep you in the loop. Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.